This is Seasons of Discontent with your hosts Rick Snyder and Matt Combs on the Hogstye Network.
Welcome to Seasons of Discontent, Season 6, Episode 8, brought to you by Rick Snyder's Washington across social media. And I'm Rick Snyder.
I'm Matt.
And we're back discussing all things Washington sports and life as part of the mighty Hogstye Network on audio and YouTube on video. So kind of a busy week, everything happening. But I thought it was interesting that Washington Commanders coach Ron Rivera took time out to talk to retired Coach Gibbs about finding a quarterback. And basically, he picked Gibbs' brain to say, you won 3 Super Bowls with 3 different quarterbacks. How'd you pull this off? What were you looking for? And Gibbs basically said, I made a list and kept going down till we found one. Okay, so if the Commanders really did go kick every tire out there, that's what they did. They followed Gibbs' system, kept looking at the best until they got down to whoever they could get. Not a bad system.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we've heard reports that they sent a couple different offers to Seattle and they didn't want to trade him within the conference or whatever excuse they came up with. I don't think that the draft package from Washington was as good as it was from the Broncos, but we'll see. Actually, I guess we'll never know. We'll never know the official package. By all accounts, they weren't in on Deshaun Watson, which is probably for the best with what's going on with this team. And I mean, they found a quarterback that, didn't have to choose to come here, that they were able to say, hey, you're coming to Washington. I think that factors into a little bit more. But hey, I mean, I love Coach Gibbs, don't get me wrong, but it always bothers me when these guys go back to Gibbs and say, hey, how did you do it? Well, Gibbs won Super Bowls in the 80s and 90s. The game has completely changed. Mark Rippon wasn't as, he's not out there throwing 45, 50 balls a game like they are nowadays. It was more of a running league back then when Gibbs was running, winning Super Bowls. I'm sure there's a little bit of a disconnect between eras, but I don't know. I mean, look, if Rivera respects Gibbs, everybody respects his Gibbs' opinion in that building. And, if Gibbs gave them the advice to go after Wentz and it works out, then, hey, it is what it is. But I don't know. It like I said in the first show earlier this week, it all depends on what Carson does on the field.
Yeah, the interesting part about Gibbs is I don't know a lot about NASCAR, but I know he wins.
Oh, yeah, he wins a lot.
Name somebody that's changed sports and still been very successful. I don't know who's done that. Anybody been a bait? I mean, Buddy Ryan left football and went into horse racing. He had a couple of horses, but nothing that good.
Jerry Glanville left coaching and became a NASCAR driver.
Was it any good?
No.
I just found out my grandfather was a legit moonshiner in North Carolina. So I guess we did start NASCAR.
Yeah, there you go. You're part of the NASCAR revolution.
Yeah. All right. So the NCAA tournament kicks in, the Sweet 16. My poor bracket caught on fire and burned away. I don't even know what happened to it, but
I think everybody's did.
It's now like, okay, the interesting games now, it's like, Duke, when are we going to finish off Krzyzewski and be done with this guy?
I told you last week off air, they're going to let Duke hang around as long as they can, and they're going to try and get him into that finals. Well, he ain't going out in the round of 32. Come on.
Well, he's -1 versus Texas Tech, who's the 3 seed. I saw Tech the other day. I mean, Duke could beat them. And if they do, they would probably play Gonzaga, that's playing Arkansas next. And Duke can beat Gonzaga. So you may be right. They may have steered, a little bit here. I could see Duke winning it.
And who do they line up to play in the Final Four?
God, if they were to win the national championship, I'd just die. That would just be.
I'm telling you, they're getting to the damn Final Four, Rick. They're going to at least get to the Final Four.
Yeah, I could see that. And the other interesting one, Miami is number 10 seed playing 11, Iowa State. Miami could win. That's Jim Larinaga who took into the Final Four. But he'd have to beat Kansas in the next round. I don't know, UCLA against North Carolina, that's an interesting game. It's funny how the two ACC teams left are Duke and Carolina and Miami now too.
Shocker.
And then St. Peter's is a 12.5-point underdog to Purdue as a 15 seed. And I have to admit, I was thinking St. Peter's was in Pennsylvania, because they play Maryland. They play Maryland once in a while. They play like AU, GW. I don't know. I was thinking they were around Philly somewhere, but that's how little I knew about them.
Where are they?
Definitely going to be an interesting weekend for that if you're into hoops on all this. And of course, hoops, Maryland went out there and they have now made it official and hired Seton Hall's Kevin Williams. I think that's a decent hire. He's a guy that's sort of like Gary Williams. You go to certain schools, you move up, and then Maryland's a jump up again. They're going to pay him $1 million more a year than they did Turgeon. But I mean, people are saying like Mike Jones from DeMatha, who's an assistant somewhere. Now you got to work guys up the ladder in college hoops. You can't take some nobody. They're not at a major program like Maryland. Maryland, even though with some troubles, I thought they outplayed what I thought they would this year at 15 and 17. I didn't think they'd be that good, but basically college basketball coaches, can you recruit and even recruit short term? Turgeon was pretty good at picking guys off the waiver wires, which is now the new game on there. Maryland's got everything else. They play Big Tens, big city, you got to be following. Nothing wrong with the Maryland program. So I'm hoping this guy does it. He did a good job at Seton Hall until he got to the tournament. And then he was out 4 times out of 5 years in the first round. That ain't going to go over well at Maryland. Maryland, people expect you to get to the 16 regularly.
But as we know, it all depends on recruiting. Kevin Willard needs to start as soon as he gets cozy in his office in Maryland. He needs to start making phone calls to guys at Mason, GW, schools like that, and encourage them guys to come over to Maryland as assistant coaches, because those guys can go into the living rooms of a kid in Prince George's County and say, hey kid, Maryland's right up the road from where you live. Stay here. We can provide everything that a big school can. We'll get you into the NBA. We've done that before. They need Rick. PG County is one of the biggest basketball counties in America. And all these guys that are great players from this, from the area of whether it's DC, Maryland, or Virginia, they always go to bigger schools and they always succeed in the NBA. I mean, well, most of them do. I won't say always. It's going to come down to, can Coach Willard keep these guys in state, which I don't think he can. Maryland is not an attractive job anymore. Maryland is not an attractive job without Gary Williams going to the, Sweet 16 or Final Four and winning a national championship when nobody thought they could. Gary Williams is no longer there. I know he's associated with the school, but he's no longer there anymore. You got to keep guys. I mean, look at all the guys that were local that went to Georgetown, and stayed, and those were the great teams. It's the same thing. It's the same thing with Maryland. Yeah, you said Maryland's in the Big 10. Yes, they have that national audience, but guess what? There's powerhouses in the Big 10, and the rivalries aren't there like they were in the ACC. So Maryland is not an attractive school to go to,
The last good coach who could recruit well locally was Lefty Driesell.
Mm-hmm.
And he got all the good talent. I mean, he had too much talent. He had guys like JoJo Hunter on the bench, and JoJo was a great player out of Mac, one of the best high schools I ever saw. And you're right, this is a great, great high school basketball area. And, it's always been. But Maryland has never done well. I mean, Gary would pick a kid off from DeMatha once in a while, and that would be like Travis Garrison, who was a, McDonald's All-American. He was awful at Maryland. They never seemed to find the real, good guys. The one that went, Durant, went elsewhere. And I don't know. So that is the key, and it's key that way in football too. This is really actually a very good high school football area between Northern Virginia, Maryland, and DC. If you can keep local talent, you can win. And they just haven't. So it would be nice to see some local kids. I mean, McCray was from Fairmont Heights, and he actually made the NBA for a short time. So there's the talent here. but you've got to be able to, I guess with this new pay the players thing, how are you going to work that out,
Yeah, but I mean, let's even go back to the Tidewater area. Look at all them guys in the Tide. Allen Iverson should have never made it to he should have been in Maryland, or he should have been in one of those Southern Virginia schools. You've got to now, he stayed local, but that was Coach Thompson. Coach Thompson had that aura and that influence. He could bring those Alonzo Mournings and Patrick Ewings and guys like that in. This is and that's why, everybody's talking about, oh, well, you got to go get Pitino. No, you don't have to get Pitino, but you needed a name of that status, and this ain't it.
Well, look at Georgetown. They got Patrick Ewing. He's been terrible.
Yeah.
They went 6-23 and winless in the conference. And the only reason you think, why didn't they fire him? What I hear is
because he's Patrick Ewing.
Well, and he costs too much. They didn't want to buy it out. So they're going to bring him back. But Patrick's done nothing.
Yeah, Georgetown hasn't been good since JT3, and JT3 was mediocre.
Yeah, I mean, they've fallen a long way from the days of Big John. That's from basketball. Georgetown and Maryland were both great. Georgetown wouldn't play Maryland because they're afraid of them.
But that's the thing with college basketball nowadays too, is look at the Gonzagas, look at the, these West Coast schools that are, getting all these great players and winning championships. That's the way that kids are nowadays. They don't want to go. It's just like I always say with the NFL, kids nowadays, they don't follow a team. They follow a player. And that's the mentalities that these college kids have, is when they're going through high school, when they're playing ball and they're, McDonald's All-Americans and ranked, in the top 10 in the country, they have their choice. Well, let's look and see who's won national titles in the past couple of years. Okay, Gonzaga, I'm going to go there. Duke is a perennial. It'll be interesting with Duke to see what happens with Coach K gone. I mean, before you could just walk into a kid's living room and say, "Hi, I'm Coach Krzyzewski, come play for Duke," and it would get it done. It'll be interesting to see if their mystique and their if they go down a peg without him. But yeah, that's the thing. I mean, these kids in high school, they're watching these games and they're like, okay, well, Gonzaga's good. Baylor won the title last year. Let's go to these schools because we can.
Yeah. Before we go, a local wrestling legend from down here passed away over the weekend. I will hand that part over to you.
Yeah, for those of you that used to watch the Attitude Era and all that wrestling back in the 90s and early 2000s, of course, I'm talking about Scott Hall, a.k.a. Razor Ramon. Yeah, Rick did not know, but he was born in St. Mary's County. I believe his mother died here in St. Mary's County, which is not far from both Rick and I. And I believe his brother still lives in St. Mary's. If he's living, I can't remember. But Scott Hall revolutionized the business. For those of you that don't know, the WWF in the 90s was very cartoony. He played a character named Razor Ramon. This is a guy from St. Mary's County playing a bootleg Tony Montana from Miami. But him and another guy named Kevin Nash went over to the WCW, which was the WWF's competition. They were given guaranteed contracts. They had control of their booking. And, back in the day, there was no internet, so nobody knew. These two guys just showed up on WCW TV when it was like, well, hey, wait a minute. Those are WWF wrestlers. What are they doing? And of course, they aligned themselves with Hulk Hogan and became the NWO, which is probably one of the most famous wrestling groups in all of history, besides like the Four Horsemen and maybe D-Generation X. But yeah, so Scott Hall, he was 63. I mean, he lived a rough life, Rick. I'm sure he was on the juice. I know he had his demons with drugs and alcohol. So, RIP to Scott Hall.
All right. And another week in the books. So we're out of here. I'm Rick Snyder.
I'm Matt.
And we'll see you soon.
All right, bye.
Thanks for listening to Seasons of Discontent on the Hogstye Network.